We're pleased this morning to talk to you about two curated collections of Forrester's works. Uh, I'll be talking about social dynamics, and Bob Eberlein will be talking about uh, economic dynamics. The project began probably 2 years before Jay died in the fall of 2016. They contain papers he considered his most important statements about the dynamics of social and economic systems. At Jay's request, Bob Eberlein edited the collection on economic dynamics, and I edited the collection on social dynamics. Social dynamics is now ready to go, open on the Society website. Economic dynamics is still in process. Here's how you find social dynamics. You go to the Society website, to publications, and you'll find the Social Dynamics online collection listed. Just click there and you'll be in the curated collection. Let me tell you about what you'll find there. There are 12 chapters in this curated collection. The first 6, there are biographies, mainly of Forrester, but some things about Gordon Brown, Forrester's mentor in the Sloan School, in the MIT School of Engineering. There are a couple of articles about Forrester's role in the early history of computing. There are wonderful chapters on the history of the field, and I'll say a little more about that in a second. Some articles on methodology, some articles on corporate applications, societal applications. Then there are some articles on critiques and responses. I'll say a little more about that in a second. There were some articles that Jay felt that were about economics, but Jay felt that they belonged in the social dynamics collection, so you'll see them there as well. Then we moved to Forrester's interest in education, which actually ran throughout, but we've collected them together here. In Chapter 9, there's articles on higher education. Chapter 10, pre-college education, including K-12. There's the 11th chapter is about lessons learned over the course of 50 years of applying the system dynamics approach. And finally, Forrester's articles on looking to where he saw his field headed. I wrote prefaces for each chapter. I was trying to identify things you're going to find there so that you might know whether to look at a given chapter or skip it and move on to something else. I don't know that you should ever do that, but the prefaces will help you do that if you want to. Here's a preface, for example, for the chapter on computing. The text is a little small, but I think it'll give you the idea of what's in these prefaces. Forrester's first great contributions emerged in the nascent days of digital computing, working with Robert Everett, developing the Whirlwind computer from 1946 to 51. The first article in this chapter gives a fascinating story of the Whirlwind project, including both its history and the way Lincoln Labs was organized for the task. The second article is an interview in which Forrester describes many of the details about coincident current random access magnetic core memory, which are actually ceramic ferrite donuts on wires, for which Forrester is justly famous. And there really are treasures in this collection of 12 chapters. Here are some examples. There's the first memo in 1956, Forrester's original note to the faculty of MIT's Sloan School, outlining his seminal thoughts about dynamic modeling. You will want to look at this to see where we all began. There are details of the equations of Forrester's unpublished corporate growth model. Elsewhere, you're going to read about negative reactions to system dynamics work and the responses of Forrester and the MIT System Dynamics group. Important work for us to all know. Forrester's last great push is one of the treasures in this collection. The potential of systems thinking and system dynamics in K-12 education. And finally, his last and perhaps most complete statement of the nature and promise of the field he worked so hard to develop. It's an amazing collection, and it took a long time and a lot of work to create it. Let me tell you about some of the people who worked so hard to make it happen. Document development. There's a list of 7 folks. These people read everything, looked for errors we should correct, like typographical errors, perhaps, made certain that the documents that we would put on the web were in the best form possible. An amazing amount of work there. Every figure had to be translated from what were usually PDFs or whatever into forms that we could put on the web. All of that was done by Carrie Sticken. Copyright issues was a nightmare, and Mary Kenny worked through all of that. There were even some journals that didn't want us to do this at all. Web development, as you will see when you look at the collection online, it was remarkably carefully done, and it took a long time to get it right. All done by Wei Zharan, a terrific job. Funding came from John Sturman at MIT, Jay Forrester, the Warren F. Jones Fund at MIT, and the System Dynamics Society. And yet we still ran out of money partway through, so if you have any spare change, we'd welcome it. The organization of these collections was done by Bob Eberlein, me, Roberta Spencer, and Chris Stave helped us out in a role as VP for Publications. And there were many volunteers that appeared at various stages all the way through. But there was one person that we owe an enormous debt of gratitude for, and that's Roberta Spencer, the retired executive director of the System Dynamics Society. I'd like to tell you a little bit about her roles, her many roles. She was tireless. She was always gracious. She was wise, dogged, detailed, in fact, downright picky, knowledgeable. She was terribly thorough. She was exhaustive and exhausting. She was completely unstoppable. She would not let this project fail. The field owes Roberta a huge thank you. So thank you, Roberta. And now we'll hear from Bob.